Hey there, everybody, and a happy Tuesday to you today. I'm still really excited and still celebrating the launch of my ebook, Sara's Stamping Techniques. And so I'm really excited to be bringing you another stamping video today. And I also want to say a nice big thank you to those of you who have purchased the book and you've sent me messages and posts saying that you've enjoyed it and that you're learning new techniques. So that makes me really happy. Thank you so much for letting me know. And the good news is that if you like this book, then they let me work on another book. So that's kind of how that goes. So I'm already in the works on volume 2, and I will keep you posted on more news about that. So thank you very much. Thank you for buying the book and also for letting me know that you're enjoying it. It means a lot to me. Okay, so for today, I want to share with you another technique that I talk about a little bit in Sara's Stamping Techniques, but this is a totally new project that I want to share with you today. So this is the card that I'm going to walk you through, and this is one that's featuring a kind of an easy watercolor approach with stamp layering. So I want to show you this process, and then I also want to show you that background technique that you can see just barely going around here on the matting of the card too. So we've got two different things to look at today. So I figure I'll show you the supplies that I'm working with, and then I'll tilt down the camera and we can get started into the actual crafting of it. Okay, so the stamps that I'm using are, it's a great name, Easy Watercolor Butterflies. And you can see you've got some really nice big stamps here. These are clear acrylic. These are from hot off the press. You've got two main images, main outline images. So this is the one that I'm using. And then you've got another one up here too. So those are the outlines. Now you've also got lots of detail images in here too, some silhouettes and some accent images. So this one here, for example, and then the one up at the top up here, there we go. These can be used to stamp to fill in the centers of those butterflies. Or of course you could just use those on their own too. There's no reason why not. You've also got some sentiments on there as well, and some swirls and some smaller butterflies. Now they do give you instructions on the back, so a little color chart here of how to layer them, which ones go with the other ones, and you can follow that, or you can do what I did, which is not follow it and do your own thing. Either way is totally fine. I think regardless of how you're using them, it's still going to look great. So those are the stamps that I'm using. I'm also using some ink pads. These are dye-based ink pads, and these are from a company called Aladdin. These are really nice dye-based inks. Any of your dye inks or your distress inks will work for this technique, but I really like these guys. So you can see nice bright colors. I love that the pad is raised up off of the plastic container, because this means that it's easier to ink things with, and you can also do some more direct to paper inking and some kind of watercolor techniques, and that's what I'm going to be showing you as well. So for that background technique, I'm also going to use my brayer. I have one of these on hand. Also, I've got a water mister that I'm going to put to use, and I'm also using my MISTI, which is looking more and more well worn every time I bring it out. And you don't have to have a MISTI for the stamping technique, but I really am finding that I'm not putting my MISTI away at all. I'm using it for pretty much everything. So it's a great tool to have on hand. It works beautifully for this technique, although you don't absolutely have to have it. It's just recommended. Okay, so now that we know what we're working with, once again, I'll give you a quick view of the card. And we'll start with the motif, the main motif of the butterfly on there. I'm going to stand up, tilt you down, and then we can get into stamping. So hang in there with me as I do this and make sure that you can see what we're going to be working on. There we go. I think you can see that pretty well. Okay, so I'm also working onto my craft sheet, which is going to come in handy more so when we get into the background technique of this. So first of all, let me grab my MISTI and a piece of just plain smooth white cardstock. This is not a fancy cardstock. It's a nice sturdy weight, maybe 80-pound weight if you're in the US, maybe what, 250 GSM if you're in the UK. It's not a really flimsy weight. because I want to make sure that it's sturdy enough to take the inking that I'm doing. So I've got this laid out onto my MISTI. So I've just got the magnets on here, so you can see that. And then I'm going to take this large silhouette image here from my stamp set. Now these are acrylic stamps, so all I need to do is just pull this off of the liner and then position it where I want it to go. So you know, on your stamps you've got a smooth side, and then you've got the side that's actually giving you the impression. That impression side is what you want to place down facing your cardstock. And then when you close this, it will cling. So if you've never used a MISTI before or a stamp positioner, this is one of the really great benefits. You can position it exactly where you want it to go. Now I'm going to start with my black ink pad, and I have to say my apologies in advance for any people living in France or native French speakers, or living in a French-speaking country, I should add. These ink pads are made in France, and all of the names are French. So my pronunciation will probably not be accurate. Apologies again. So I'm using the black, which is réglisse, which I think means licorice in France. So in French. So if I am not correct, my apologies again, but if I am correct, let me know. Any French speakers, or Christine, maybe you in France also know if this is licorice or if I'm just making it up. I think I know because I like black licorice, so that would stick in my mind. Okay, so I'm just inking up my stamp, and I want to show you how this works. So again, if you've never used a stamp positioner before, as I'm placing this down and just smoothing down the top portion, you can lift this off and you can see that I've got my perfectly stamped motif. Now, if it had happened that some portion of this didn't make a perfect impression, what I could then do is just add a little bit more ink to the stamp, leave this in place, leave my paper in place, and then stamp it again. So this is a great benefit of that. So I'm going to grab a baby wipe here and just clean off the stamp and pull this off and set it aside. Now I've still got my cardstock on here. I'm going to leave this on here so you can see again how beautiful that stamping is. It's a nice sketchy effect. Now what I can do is come back and choose what I want to use to fill in my stamped butterfly. So I'm going to grab this design here, which again would also work beautifully on its own. You don't have to use it just to fill in your stamped image. And now what I'm going to do is position the stamp, again, smooth side on the top facing me, and I'm just going to place this down on top where I want it to go. Please bear in mind though, and I'm going to bring back in this package here, if you look at the butterflies on here, the stamping is not perfectly within the lines of the main silhouette image or the main outline image. So don't feel like it has to be absolutely perfect and contained. In fact, I'm not sure that it actually would be. So once again, I'm going to close this up, and then I'm going to stamp this with Mer du Sud, which is a beautiful, beautiful blue. So again, just ink this up and stamp. The ink pads themselves are a really nice size as well, so they make it quite handy. They stack too, which is really nice for storing. Okay, so I'm stamping this down, and when I lift that off, you can see that I have it within the lines of the butterfly outline, but it's kind of a, yeah, splashy sort of watercolor effect. It's an easy watercolor effect, as the name of the stamps might suggest, but it's also really sort of freeing not to have to worry about doing everything so precisely. Okay, so I can leave this as it is, or I can keep going. And I think what I'll do is keep going. So I'm going to grab back my stamp set. And in this case, I'm going to go for the center element in here and pull that off. Now I think this one is meant to go with this other guy, which it can, or you can use it for other things. So I'm just going to pop this one down and close this up again. And then I'm going to use this really nice sunshine yellow, which is Aurora. I will hazard a guess. And ink that. So you can see how nicely they all stack together. It's just really handy on my overcrowded work surface. And then I'm going to stamp this down. Now when I do this, I'm starting to get some really beautiful color layering going on here. So this is as easy as it gets. I can't believe it. And I love the effect that I'm able to get with this too. Now the butterfly does also have a little innie, you know, like a little body center. So let's take this, and I think I'll also use this really pretty green. I'm going to put his body down here. This is where you can see the stamp positioner really comes in handy. Even though I'm not trying to get it so precise, it really just makes it easier to get that aligned. And this is one of my favorite greens. Vervain is what I'm going to hazard a guess at for the pronunciation. Really kind of a spring green. And I just want to get a little bit of color in here with this body. And so now I have my stamped and colored butterfly, which I think is just such a pretty casual watercolor effect. I just really, really like this, and I think it is absolutely beautiful for a card focal. So let me hold this up so that you can see this a little bit better. Now I've also added on the card front Delivering Smiles, which is also included on that stamp set. Okay, so I also want to show you this background effect because I really like it when you have a background, even if it's just for matting, that also coordinates with your stamped focal. So for this, I'm going to move aside my Misty. And again, I'm working onto my craft sheet. Try and get this position so you can see. And I'm using a brayer, the water mister, and a couple of the dye inks. And so in this case, I'm going to use the Mer du Sud and the Aurora. And I can also work in the Vervain if I want to. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to move aside my cardstock, and I'm just going to press the inks right onto my craft sheet. Now this beautiful blue is quite a rich blue. It's quite a concentrated color. So I only need a little bit of that. I'm going to add a little bit of the green on there and then come in with the yellow and do that. So I've kind of got a ring of color on here. And then what I'll do is mist this. So I'm going to hold my mister back maybe 8-9 inches and at an angle and add a couple of spritzes of water. And then I'm going to take my brayer and I'm going to just blend, not over blend. I'm not getting a great big puddle of green in here, but I do want to sort of blend out those colors. Basically, so I'm not getting the square shape of the ink pad. So you can see what I've got here. Now what I'll do is take a piece of plain white cardstock and I'm just going to press this down. I'm not twisting it, I'm not swiping it, although you could do that. I'm just going to press it and then gently tap here. This is one of my favorite ways to get a great background effect. And then lift this off and I have a really beautiful, again, sort of a watercolor technique that is going to go perfectly with my stamped focal. It's so nice to have two elements that coordinate so easily. Now, of course, I've got leftover color on here. You don't want to waste it, do you? So I'm going to take my cardstock and just sort of run the edges through this ink. And then you can see when I hold it up against another piece of white cardstock that I have a really pretty inky effect going on in the edges. So if I hold it at an angle, I'll get an even stronger effect on here. Turn this around so that you can see. And if I hold it up against another white piece, you can see that really cool edging on there. Again, going along with the watercolor motif of the butterfly and that easy watercolor butterfly stamp set. And then I just need to clean this up with a baby wipe, any leftover ink that I don't want to put to use. So that's how easy it is to get a watercolor background as well as a watercolor motif for your butterfly. I'm going to stand up again and say goodbye to you as we're heading out here. Hang on a second. My wobbly computer. Thank you for staying with me. Okay, hang on just a sec. There we go. Okay. Once again, thank you so much. I'll give you another quick look at that butterfly card. So we've done the card focal, we've done the background, adding that stamped sentiment on here, and that's just using the black ink as well. A little bit of sheer ribbon and some self-adhesive rhinestones on here too. Once again, the stamp set that we're working with is the Easy Watercolor Butterflies. This is from hot off the press. You can find these over at Paper Wishes. I think they're having a pretty good sale right now, so you might want to check that out. Also, the Eyes Ink dye ink pads. These have been a lot of fun to use, and you can see how beautifully they work with stamping. Now, if you like that technique, I think you might also enjoy my book, Sara's Stamping Techniques. This is Basics and Beyond, and this is published by Bella Crafts. I will include the link also with this post so that you can go over and check it out. And once again, a big thank you to those of you who have already purchased and have let me know that you've enjoyed the book. That means a lot. Okay, thanks again, you guys, for joining me, and I will catch up with you next time. Take care.